everyone, my name is Chris Green. I want to welcome you here to my channel, Learning Guitar with Chris Green. I started this entire YouTube channel because for years and years, I've been teaching private lessons to students, and over again, we're going over the same lessons. And I thought that if I could put this in video form, not only for the people that take lessons with me in real life, but if you happen to follow my channel, if you want to hit the subscribe button, you'll be getting lessons just like this, which are lessons that I would give you in a private lesson. It's completely for free. So do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and we'll get started with today's video. One of the things that I truly think will separate someone who is just learning how to play the acoustic guitar from somebody that might be on that intermediate level is the ability to fingerpick. I find a lot of people that they spend a lot of time learning how to play chords on the guitar, but they only wait until later on in life where they decide to start getting into fingerpicking. If you learn how to fingerpick, it gives you a whole lot of possibilities. It's not just for all of the bluegrass players out there, but especially if you happen to play in a church setting or you're in like weddings and funerals, or you're asked to play instrumentally, it certainly gets old after a while strumming chords over and over again. As soon as you start picking chords, people start to notice. So I highly want to recommend that you get into fingerpicking. So this is going to be a little bit more of an intermediate level of fingerpicking, but I want to break everything down on a very simple level. We're going to start with a few chords that we're going to be talking about, not just doing fingerpicking in the arpeggiated form. So typically when you learn to fingerpick, you focus on patterns that have to do with your right hand. So if you are a right-handed guitar player, you're probably used to seeing something referred to as like Pima, P-I-M-A. Each of your fingers gets a letter, and if you look at any sort of the classical guitar books, you'll see this kind of vernacular where it's basically referring to your thumb, your index finger, your middle finger, and then A is for your ring finger, okay? And when you're learning patterns as fingerpicking, you'll start with different rolls. So the first one you might learn, if you take a simple G chord with your left hand, the first one you might learn involves the thumb, pointer, middle, and then ring finger. And you may just repeat that as if it were quarter notes. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I would say that is very much the basic form of fingerpicking. Now, when I'm doing that particular pattern, my thumb is playing on the low E string as I'm fretting a G chord. My thumb is hitting the low E string. My pointer finger is pretty much always hovering around the open G string. Then my middle finger is going to be attached to the B string. And then my ring finger is on the last string, the high E string. So I've made a video on this previously talking about the claw technique. Essentially, your thumb is going to be concerned with the bass or the lower notes, and then you've got your index finger, your middle finger, and your ring finger covering the G, B, and E strings. I would say about 80% of the time that I'm finger picking, that's mainly where my fingers are going to be. Now, the one that has to move the most is, of course, going to be the thumb. So if I'm fretting a G chord, my thumb will be on the low E string, and I can pluck like this. But as soon as I go to a C chord, I no longer want to hit this low E string. My thumb needs to move to the A string, the second string from the top. Back to G, C, and everything you've been hearing has essentially just been a roll. It's very arpeggiated. I'm playing one note at a time, and I'm going thumb, pointer, middle, and then ring finger. What I want to talk to you today, the majority of this video is going to be involving two fingers at once. So we are using a claw technique to pluck two strings at the same time, and then we want to continue with an arpeggiated pattern, okay? So instead of me just sitting here playing an arpeggio, I can start that pattern by plucking. So in that situation, instead of me just hitting my thumb, but using my thumb by itself, I'm gonna take my thumb and my middle finger. My middle finger is on the B string, the second string from the bottom. And then my thumb is on that low E string, and I'm gonna pluck those simultaneously. So that's something that you definitely will need to practice. If you're just getting into finger picking, you will need to develop a little bit of toughness with your fingers. So if you just start out and things are really hurting or you're starting to feel some pain, well, that pain won't last forever, but I highly encourage you to try to push through as much of it as possible. If you start bleeding for any reason, like, please take a break. If you have any blisters, it's best to just let those things heal and let them callus over so that you can truly fingerpick with freedom. But like we were talking about earlier, this is going to be about this cluster, this claw technique. So I don't want to fingerpick just, I would say, blandly by just playing arpeggios. There's so many different patterns you can play, and that's certainly a valuable technique. If you're particularly interested in playing banjo, there's gonna be a lot of rolls. Essentially, you're just using one finger at the same time. But my next question, or the one that you're probably asking, is, well, what two notes, how do I know what notes I need to pluck at the same time? And so this is where we're getting into the meat of the lesson, because I want to walk you through just a few simple chords and some go-to spots that I often will reach for this clawing technique. It's not always the thumb and the middle finger. It could be my thumb and my ring finger, but primarily I'm kind of reaching for the index finger, the middle finger, and we'll go through an explanation of why I pick certain notes. So let's just go back to that G major chord. Hopefully you know how to play a G major chord already. If any of this is just completely overwhelming, feel free to come back to this video as often as you need to. That's what my channel exists for. But I do want to give a quick shout out that there is another video on my channel, which is basically my beginner's deep dive into everything on the guitar, how to tune your guitar, where to put your fingers to play a G chord and such. So check that out if you need to. But let's go back to the G major chord. My left hand is going to have my ring finger, my middle finger is on the low E string. My pointer finger is on the 2nd fret of the A string. And then my ring finger and my pinky are on the 3rd frets of the B and the high E string. It's very much a G major chord. Now, the great thing about the G major chord is that if your fingers are in the right positions, you can strum or you can pluck any string and it's generally going to sound good. On a G major chord, the low E, that is the root of our chord. That is a G. So if I'm playing a G major root position chord, I pretty much always will have my thumb on the G, which is going to be my low E string. So that is a given. But now we want to know, what finger are we going to add to that low E string? Well, you have a bunch of different options. If you put your pointer finger on the G string, the open G string, you'll have an octave essentially. So you have your low E string right there with your thumb, and then the open G string with your pointer finger sounds like this. That doesn't sound bad, but I would say that that might be one of the more boring notes to choose, because essentially you're just getting two Gs. It could get lost. It doesn't sound particularly interesting to me. So my next option is my middle finger, which I have my middle finger resting on the B string, which is being fretted on the 3rd fret. So if I'm on the 3rd fret of the B string, this note is actually the note D. So what we have is we have the note G, and then my middle finger is plucking the B string, which is a D. And that's a very pleasing sound. If you choose to use your ring finger on the high E string, again, you have another G, okay? This is a couple octaves up. That one is much more prominent. So if you're playing something that's a little more melodic, a finality of the song that you're playing, you can definitely use your ring finger and your thumb at the same time. But by and large, 99% of the time on a root position G major chord, I'm going to go for my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, which gives me a D, and then the low E string. So it would sound something like this. So for simplicity's sake, it would be ideal in the future that every single finger picking pattern that you happen to know, that you could incorporate this claw. You'll get very comfortable being able to just grab a guitar and to be able to find that B string with your middle finger. So that's step number one. Make sure that you're hearing both of those notes very clear at the same time. Next, I would say that just to give us a simple finger picking pattern to follow our chord that we're plucking right here. Afterwards, I'm just going to take my pointer finger on the open G string and then that middle finger on the B string, and I'm just going to go back and forth. So we're going to have this together, pointer finger, middle finger, pointer finger, as back and forth as much as I need to. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and claw and 2, 3. So you can fit this wherever you need to, but again, majority of the time when you go to your chord change, if you're going to a G chord, go straight to the claw where you're going to play that low E and the B string 3rd fret at the same time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay. While we're there, if you go to your E minor 7 chord, it's very similar. Okay, so now I've got my E minor chord laid out here. I have an open E string. And now you're hearing a low E and you're hearing that D, which is, again, my ring finger and pinky are in the same spot they were for the G major chord. But for the E minor chord, I'm taking my middle finger and putting it on the 2nd fret of the A string. My pointer finger is on the 2nd fret of the D string. Again, you can strum all of the strings. And there's your E minor 7. But if I'm going to do this claw technique, I'm essentially going to do the exact same thing with my right hand that I was doing for the G major chord. So G major, it was this. But for E minor, it is going to be this. Back to G. E minor. Okay, so what we're being focusing on is, as we're learning these different chords, is primarily going to be where is your thumb hitting, and then where is the root of the chord, or what is the bass note that you really want to emphasize as the structure for your finger picking pattern, okay? So on the low E string, if you're in the key of G, obviously you have G here, you have E minor. If you decide to go to a D over F sharp, this kind of structure here, you can do the same thing. I have my pointer finger on the 2nd fret of the low E string. I've got my ring finger and my pinky exactly where they were for our G major chord. I'm just now introducing this F sharp, which is the 2nd fret of the low E. And then on my G string, I'm on the 2nd fret with my middle finger. And that note is basically something I want to bring out with my pointer finger. So again, the claw is the D that we're getting from the high B string, 3rd fret. My right hand is doing the exact same thing. No matter if I'm on the G chord, it's plucking the exact same strings. I'm going thumb and middle finger. Middle finger is on the B string, thumb is on the low E. I'm going to pluck together. Then I'm going to do pointer finger, middle finger, pointer finger, middle finger, pointer finger, middle finger. I'm going to D over F sharp. I'm doing the exact same thing. Thumb and middle finger at the same time. Then pointer finger, middle finger. Then E minor. So G major is this. D over F sharp, E minor. What's going to give your finger picking a consistency, not only in like your volume, but also the tone you're getting, is that the more you practice maintaining your hand is in the exact same position as long as possible. You really don't want to be shifting this up and down or up and down this way as you're changing chords. Try to find a nice, easy spot that you can rest your hand so that you know where you're at on the guitar. Because the worst thing ever is that you go to pluck a low E string and you accidentally end up hitting one of these strings down here. So that is the low E string. There's a few other chords I want to show you, and those are primarily going to be centered around the A string, which is the second string from the bottom here. I apologize, in all of my videos, I always sometimes I refer to the lower strings as strings that are on the bottom, and then the higher strings are strings that are up high. It's very confusing, but I am thinking more of like their terms of pitch. So on the low A string, this is the second from the last string here. We're gonna fret our C major root position chord. So this is one that you definitely should know if you're starting out on the guitar. I've got my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. I've got my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string. I've got my index finger is on the 1st fret of the B string. I'm gonna leave my pinky just floating here. It doesn't need to be fretting anything whatsoever. And I'm not going to strum or pluck the low E string for this chord. So a C major chord here. The 3rd fret of the A string, this is my C. So if I'm plucking, for continuing our pattern here, if I'm plucking together, I'm gonna go A string with my thumb, and again, my middle finger is going to be on the B string. What this produces is an octave, which if you remember from our G major chord, if you hear an octave, it's just not as interesting as something that you get with a 5th. So on our C major chord, instead of me using my middle finger in this claw whenever I'm playing the chord together, instead of going with an octave, I have a couple of options. I can change my C major chord. I can add this D note with my pinky. That sounds a little bit dissonant. That sounds fun to me. So that can be like a little bit of an embellishment if you want to add that in. So instead of us hearing this, pinky, or with this C major chord, you can use your ring finger of your picking hand, and your ring finger is going to pluck the high E string. So that pattern using a C major chord is my thumb is on the A string, my ring finger is on the high E. Those are going to be plucked simultaneously. And then I'm going right back to my index finger on the G string, my middle finger on the B string, back and forth. So together, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If I want to use my middle finger, I can add that D note on the 3rd fret of the B. Or I can go for the octave. And you can see where your melodic playing is really going to have some fun, because what you're able to do is you're able to emphasize whatever these notes are up high. You're able to bring those out in something that sounds very interesting. I could start with C. It depends on how long you're on the chord, but we're going to go with C major root position. I'm going to do a measure of this. Play with that all day long. The next chord is going to be your G over B. So I want you to go back to your G major root position, but instead of playing this low E string, we're going to lift this up and we're going to emphasize on the A string. Our thumb is going to emphasize the B note, which is the 2nd fret of the A string. It'll sound like this. And again, since we're in a G shape, I'm choosing to pluck my thumb on the 2nd fret of the A and my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. That's a G over B. The G over B is very transitional. It's very similar to how the D over F sharp felt very transitional, like it wanted to go somewhere. D over F sharp is wanting to resolve to a G. A G over B is wanting to resolve to that C, which you can do any sort of C that you're interested in. And the other chord, I would say, is to take your root position C chord and slide it up 2 frets. So we have this D shape. So we have C major right here, slide it up 2 frets. And again, for this D shape here, I'm gonna go with my thumb on the A string, my middle finger on the B string. This is what that sounds like. Now for this D shape, since we have an open E string at the bottom, I could just use my ring finger to pluck the open E. Or I could use my middle finger and my pinky, basically put my pinky on the 5th fret of the B string and use my middle finger of my picking hand. It's really up to you. If you're doing a fast picking and you're primarily going with your middle finger and your thumb plucking strings together, then it may be more convenient for you to add your pinky on your left hand so that you're always plucking that B string. So just to put together the things that we've covered in this video, we have this E minor shape. We have the D over F sharp. We have G. We have G over B. We have C major. And we have D. Back to G. And of course, there are a ton more chords. I could just spend all day on this type of technique because all we've covered is essentially just one picking pattern. There's so many different ways that you can combine all of these different appendages to make some great sounding music. But hopefully that's sparked a little bit of maybe some inspiration for you to be picking on the guitar and to really break out of, it's not that arpeggiating everything with your fingers, it's not like that is a bad skill. You definitely should spend as much time as you can getting better and cleaner and more consistent with that. But don't forget that after you've learned these complicated patterns with your fingers, you can also add fingers together. You can do groups of 2, you can do groups of 3, and so forth. So I want that to be very much an introductory to leveling up your finger picking technique. If you missed any part of this video, feel free to go back as many times as possible. This is completely being made free to you, so I only ask you hit the like and subscribe buttons to help support the channel. Share the show with your friends. Anybody else is interested in learning guitar, just tell them to find Learn Guitar with Chris Green here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.